When I was a kid, around 11 years old, life in my small town was remarkably simple. I lived with my mom and dad and my little sister Lily. Across the street lived my closest friend Ethan. He shared his home with his parents and an older brother whose presence felt ominous even when he wasn't around. Ethan's home was a whirlwind of confusion and chaos. His dad drank too much and his mom often fought with him, shouting about bills and broken promises. His brother acted like he was the king of the world, spending all his time in his room, blaring heavy metal music, drowning out all other sounds of the house. It was loud, unpredictable, and just plain messy, but I was used to it, just like I was used to the creaking of our old house. That all changed one night when everything shifted, and the chaos became something far more sinister. I woke in the dead of night, a nagging urge for the bathroom pulling me from my dreams. As I tiptoed past my window, I noticed that Ethan's house had its lights on, something unusual for that hour. Returning from the bathroom, I paused again, glancing out toward their backyard. To my surprise, I spotted Ethan's mom, a familiar figure in her lounge pajamas, shining like a beacon of warmth. She stood there peering into the darkness, calling out for their cat, a fluffy little ball of fur that had gone missing before. The cold night air nipped at my skin as I watched her, the distant rustle of the trees the only sound accompanying my unease. And then suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the back of the house, a clattering that sent waves of dread crashing over me. I froze, instinctively sensing that something was terribly wrong. Ethan's mom looked hesitantly in the direction of the noise and began walking toward it. My heart raced as an inexplicable fear gripped me. I wanted to run, to pull the quilt over my head, and forget this dreadful moment altogether. But instead, I stood rooted to the spot, silent and trembling. That's when it happened. A scream pierced through the night, a sound filled with sheer terror that reverberated in my bones. I knew it was her. The scream turned into frantic cries, each one slicing deeper than the last. It was a sound filled with fear, pain, and utter despair. Light flooded the house as Ethan's father burst through the front door, confusion painted across his face. He yelled for his wife, but then his voice joined hers in a haunting chorus of anguish. Another scream, another piece of my childhood shattered in an instant, and then the world around me fell into an eerie silence, a chilling kind of quiet that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. The darkness enfolded the house across the street. I felt as if the shadows had seeped into their home, smothering it. The only evidence of life came from me standing frozen at the window, watching as the chaos transformed into an unnerving stillness. Then, one by one, the lights in their house flickered off. I remember it so vividly, the living room light extinguished, then the kitchen, each snuffing out until darkness enveloped everything. The only thing remaining was the wind rustling through the trees, creating a sound that filled the void left behind. Suddenly, a flicker of light surged back on. Startled, I found myself staring at a figure silhouetted in the glow, a shape I recognized instantly. It was Ethan's mom, frozen like a statue, staring directly at me. I backed away from the window, panic coiling within me, throwing myself under the covers, desperately trying to shake the feeling that her chilling gaze remained on me. The next morning felt bizarrely normal, like the world had reset itself overnight. I tried to convince myself that it had all been a terrible dream, yet the tension lingered like a shadow. Curiosity clawed at me, driving me to the window once more. Ethan's family was outside, acting as if nothing had happened. The sun bathed their home in light, a stark contrast to the dread that had enveloped me just hours before. His mother was tending to their garden, watering bright blooms I swore had been wilted the day before. Ethan's dad was mulling around with a bright smile etched on his face, and Ethan's brother lounged casually on the porch, flicking through magazines as if life had resumed its dull pattern. They looked perfect, too perfect, as if they stepped out from a glossy advertisement. I waved to Ethan's mom, unsure how to approach this surreal shift. She beamed back at me, and it felt agonizingly wrong. I glanced at Ethan, searching for signs that he too felt something sinister, hovering beneath their fabricated happiness. When he arrived at my house later, a nervous energy thrummed between us. "Ethan," I said hesitantly, "did anything strange happen last night? Did you hear anything unusual?" "Nah, everything was fine. My parents have been super chill lately. I think it's nice." But there was something so eerily off about it all. The way his sister smiled, how their laughter felt orchestrated, as though they were all playing their parts in a far too happy play. I felt as though there was a veil of unease draped over their household. Worry knotted in my gut as I convinced him to come outside and play. Maybe it would offer some distraction. Maybe it would make sense of the tumble of confusion. We wandered to the park, our laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. Yet even amid childhood games, that cruel feeling of being watched gnawed at me, refusing to be silenced. It was during a game of tag that I pulled Ethan aside and pressed him. What if they're different? What if something happened last night that we don't know about? He frowned, brushing off my concerns. You know how it is. Maybe they're just trying to be better. Families change sometimes. But it felt wrong, more like a facade than anything genuine. The air was thick with tension as we played on, yet the happiness around me felt like it belonged to a different world. As the sun dipped, painting the horizon golden, I felt the sedentary weight of eyes on me once more, that pervasive instinct that something unseen was lingering just beyond reach. Night returned, and with it the shadows crept back. I fought sleep, knowing I'd be haunted by visions of Ethan's family once more. When the dreaded hour arrived, I inched my way to the window, dread tightening around my chest. And there he was, Ethan's dad, staring right back at me, his smile wide and unsettling. My heart thundered as I dived back under the blanket, shaking like a leaf. The silence that settled over my room was suffocating, and I could almost taste the fear. That night was plagued with insomnia and whispers. Each creak of the house intensified my paranoia. I closed my eyes, but every time I did, my mind conjured images of Ethan's family, their glowing smiles transforming into sinister grins that danced like shadows. I felt something stir behind me, an unseen presence creeping closer. When I gathered the courage to glance behind, nothing but the assurance of an empty room met me. But now, with each day that passed, I felt reality warp further, twisting into a nightmare I couldn't escape, the shadows of their joy always lurking, waiting just beyond my grasp. I realized then that sometimes the chaos around us can shift into something much darker, something that wears a mask of normality as it ensnares us. From that moment on, I would never look at Ethan's family the same way again, because I knew that beneath their perfect smiles, something horrific had quietly unfolded in the dead of night. A family that was far from what it once was, and I sensed it would soon claim me too.